What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Sports Talk on Tap podcast. We're here. You can find daily videos Monday through Friday covering all the four major sports leagues, whether that be NFL, NHL, MLB, NBA. We're here to talk about it. And Nick, in today's episode, why not talk about the reigning Western Conference champions? And we're going to be discussing mainly, does Dallas have what it's take after, running through one of the most toughest Western conferences we've had in a while, going all the way to the NBA Finals, but falling 3 games short of their champions. Does it have what it takes, Nick, to let alone win the Western Conference, but even have a shot at the NBA Finals? Can they win a chip? Before we get into that, though, just want to give a quick shout out. USA men's basketball team plays tonight, so we'll obviously, be covering them throughout their Olympic run, and also summer league's underway. So anyone who already misses basketball get to watch that. So it's kind of, great to see, just the guys back out there, some guys that may be helpful for teams next season, the rookies. So NBA, much shorter off season than the NFL. That's what I like to see. We're already back in the basketball before we even know it. Nick gets to see Jason Tatum on the floor, Derek White and Drew Holiday, but not Jaylen Brown. So it's I think he's a little salty about that still. But, for me, get to see my boy, Ant-Man. So the Olympic teams, LeBron, Curry, KD, Booker, you already know how it is. So it should be fun games to watch. But, yeah, just wanted to give a shout out to those. But, Nick, back to the main question. Do you think Dallas has what it takes to get back to the Western Conference Finals, win that, and then even have a shot at winning the NBA chip with the moves they've made this offseason?
I think they definitely have what it takes. It usually takes a superstar and then a good supporting cast. That's what I usually probably put the threshold as. And then when you have more than that, you're probably looking at a favorite. But I think they have what it takes. Do I think they're actually going to get back there? I don't. I think the West is just so competitive, so tough, like we've talked about. There's so many teams that are trying to get better to get to the finals. When looking at the East compared to the West, like the odds for the Celtics getting back are probably so much higher than the Mavericks, just because like the Celtics obviously retain their roster, but also just like there's, probably 3 or 4 teams that are going to compete with the Celtics.
Mm-hmm.
And in the West, it's, up and down. There's a ton of teams that are going to be very competitive. The Nuggets, I know they didn't really get better this offseason, which might hurt them. Maybe it sits.
I think that's a matchup problem, though, because it's like, are you going to put Gafford or Lively on Jokic? That's just so Jokic could have like 40 points per game that series. And I think that's a matchup where if the Mavericks Nuggets faced off this year, I think the Nuggets would have won just because of matchup problems. And it's like the Timberwolves threw Cat and Gobert at him, and he was still averaging like 30, but we were crediting, Cat and his defense for what they did just to slow him down. And it's like Lively, as good as he was his rookie season, I mean, just the body weight size of him and Jokic and like PJ Washington or Daniel Gafford, kind of whoever you threw at him, that's a matchup problem for Dallas.
Yeah. But regardless of all that, I think there's a lot of teams that have what it takes to get to the finals, but I think obviously only one gets there. But I can't say Dallas is in my, top pick to get back. I would pick Minnesota over them. I'd probably still pick Denver over them just because of the Jokic factor. I might pick OKC over them. I know they beat OKC this year, but I think OKC is going to be they've gotten better, like, through the draft, getting Caruso, like OKC's gotten much better. So I don't know I think Dallas definitely makes the playoffs. I think that's safe to say. I know they've had some weird years. Like last year was a weird year. They traded for Kyrie. I'm pretty sure. Didn't they miss the playoffs or like
they missed the play-in?
Yeah, they missed the play-in. So it's definitely weird there. Like they're definitely a little inconsistent when it comes to how good they play. But how long is Kyrie there for? I don't know.
I think he's under contract for like another year or so. I could be wrong. We'll see. I don't know.
So, barring any sort of trade, because, I don't know what Kyrie feels about Dallas. Obviously, he's kind of bounced around. a few places. It seems like he likes it there, so I wouldn't be surprised if,
Yeah.
As an extension to stay with Luka.
I
That's
think
obvious.
he's matured as a person.
Yeah.
As
Oh,
he's
definitely.
gone.
100%. Like, we saw it during the finals
Yeah.
whenever they would ask him about, like, his time in Boston and stuff and how, he feels about the fans, because obviously the fans were giving him all sorts of crap. And he's definitely matured, and I respect the hell out of Kyrie now. Like, he's become a leader. And I think
No, and he was a good leader for the Celtics.
So, but back to the original question. Yes, they have what it takes, like I said, but they're not my pick to get back to the finals. I don't think they're that's going to go back.
So when I look at this, obviously they made some interesting moves. They lost Derek Jones to, I believe, the Clippers. They lost Josh Green. It was actually really good for them in the finals. But they gained, obviously, their biggest probably addition was Klay Thompson. Solid shooter, obviously. A little dip in production last season. It was a very weird year for him. He was really bad to start, then came off the bench and was kind of a flamethrower, then had that playing game where he went 0 for 10 and the memes lived on. But overall, you had one of the best shooters of all time. He's definitely slowed down defensively, so we'll see. Because having Derek Jones Jr., losing him, I think it's going to be overlooked just because the different defensive versatility he had, his length. I just remember it bothered a lot of, the guards. I know Anthony Edwards really struggled the first 3 games, and Derek Jones was on him a good amount, just kind of throwing fits at him. And I think, when I look at Dallas's run, kind of just recapping it now, because like the title says, it's been nearly a month since their loss to Boston. So kind of have some time to look back on their run. I think a lot of things fell their way. And I'm not, I did have them alone making the Western Conference Finals just because Kawhi's injury was always, a huge thing. And I just, if there's a team you can't trust, it's the Clippers. So I kind of knew Dallas, especially without Kawhi, they would have just had more talent with Luke and Kyrie to squeak by. And so they obviously were able to win that series in 6. And then you get the 1 seed Thunder. But Nick, I kind of talked about that back in the series preview where the youth was probably going to show, unfortunately, despite, OKC probably being like, the better team, lineups 1 through 10. Josh Giddey was obviously a real concern, and the stars just showed up. Luka Doncic really stepped up the end of that series, and obviously, despite Shea being good, you could tell players like Chet and Jalen Williams just looked tired and kind of worn out, and not ready for the moment to make a huge finals run as a 1 seed, despite being, I think they were like the youngest 1 seed. So you get one of the most inexperienced teams in the second round, and the Dallas takes care of business, and then it was kind of the same situation in the next round. Nick, I know you remember I did pick Minnesota to win that series, and they were favored, but I was much more concerned. I think I picked us to win in 7, and I really did not feel good about the series just because it reminded me of the OKC series in a way where your best players are Kyrie and Luka. They've been here before, whereas the Timberwolves' best players, you have Anthony Edwards, who's only 22, is literally us in the Western Conference Finals, our age. I didn't really know how he was going to do, and there was some games I remember, infamously game 2, turned the ball over with like 20 seconds left. Just some inexperienced stuff showed for him, showed for Karl Anthony Towns, who's a little bit older, 28, but has also never been there before. It was Naz Reid's first run, Jay McDaniel's first run. So I was going to expect some bumps in the roads, and they, were able to take Dallas' definition of showing their experience over the youth. Just every game they closed out down the stretch when it was like tied or the Timberwolves were winning with like 3 minutes to go. They just knew what it takes to close out those big games, and the Timberwolves didn't quite yet. And that was obviously my biggest fear. And then they just ran into a Boston team, though, that knew what it takes, was simply just more talented than them, and Boston's probably the most experienced team that didn't win a championship until that point. Constant finals, Eastern Conference Finals runs. So I think for Dallas, it was still a great run. I still think they're a top top probably 5 team in this conference. But if you were to ask me again, if they were to face a team like next year, OKC with the additions they made, the Timberwolves with their draft additions they acquired, and just getting Anthony Edwards getting a year old there, the Nuggets with Nikola Jokic, I'm kind of on the same boat as you. I just don't know if they have what it takes to make another run like this, especially losing a key piece like Derek Jones. And, but for Dallas, you still have optimism with Clay. Derek Lively is going into his second year. He had a great rookie season, so he can build off of that. But at the end of the day, this team is not like a regular season gauntlet. I know they heated up really at the end of last season, but, Kyrie with his age kind of just, takes some time off. And Luka, can he be in shape for an 82-game season to be, efficient? Because we see a lot of these games where he'll drop like 30, but like on 30 shots in like, February games just because he's tired. So I'll be curious to see what kind of shape he's in entering next season. So I'm not expecting them to be like a 1 seed or anything. And they kind of never are that. They were like the 5th seed last season. So it'll be interesting to see, but I just don't know if they can make another run at this when I think teams like the Timberwolves and Thunder got better. I would say a team like the Nuggets got worse, but that's kind of more of a matchup thing. But, other teams could surprise, like if the team like the Suns build continuity, could they be, a team that has the firepower to match like a Dallas offensively wise, kind of I'd pick Dallas, but, a team like that, there's always a team that surprises and gets tremendously better. So it'll be interesting to see, but yeah, obviously I think they obviously have the leadership, the superstar in Luka, just the way he hit some tough shots in the run to the finals. They have what it takes, but I still just have some offensive concerns when Kyrie can't quite get going. PJ Washington, he's really inconsistent from 3, but we'll see what happens because obviously they proved everyone wrong last year. But with that being said, I feel like everything almost fell right for them last season, and they obviously just ran into a juggernaut, but in Boston. But I don't think everything will quite fall right for them to make another finals run.
Right. Going back to what you said about Kyrie and just he needs to be more consistent if they want a chance. Do you think that was just the being in Boston factor? Because we saw the numbers in Boston compared to in Dallas, and I feel like they were night and day. Like he was in the 2 games they played in Dallas. I know they split, but he seemed
it's very tough. Yeah, I remember that game. I mean, game 4, I think that Boston didn't show up. That game was, I think Dallas won
game was
50 or something.
The
game I look at, Kyrie's consistencies in Boston were really bad. He struggled in Boston. That was probably a huge thing that you obviously want to point to. But I feel like Boston, like game 5, they just played better than Dallas. I feel like it came down to just the little things in that series. I think game 3, just Luka's meltdown is what surprised me the most in that game, fouling out when Dallas made that great comeback. Nick, I remember we were live for that. We did the TikTok. I did a TikTok when Boston was up 20-something in the 4th quarter, and then Dallas went on like a 19-0 run, and it was like a 1-point game. But Luka fouled out, just wasn't getting going. That's what surprised me the most in that series, and that's the game I look at when, even though it's 2-0, if they win that, it's 2-1, and then game 4, we knew what happened. Then the series is 2-2. That game 3, I think, was their biggest missed opportunity because they were at home. They had all the momentum on their side, and they just couldn't close it down the stretch. And part of the reason why it was Luka fouled out with like 3 minutes to go. So that's a game I look at where I was like, man, they really had an opportunity here, and they blew it. But obviously, you want to look back in the Boston games. Yeah, if Kyrie was more efficient, maybe those games are closer and they win one. I think game 2 was fairly close. And then there was that Jaylen Brown, Derek White block on PJ Washington. And then game 5, Boston just kind of blew him out. So, yeah, I think Kyrie's Boston woes were rough. But I really remember just game 3, Luka, they started off really good. I think they were up at the half. Then Boston went up by like 20-something points. And I was like, crap. Luka just was so frustrated he wasn't getting a call, and it was like, what is this? And that's the game I look at where it was like he had a chance to make the series 2-2, and they just couldn't quite get done. I think it was a mixture of both Kyrie, Luka, PJ Washington not helping them out at all on the offensive end. Derek Jones also struggling on the offensive end. It was kind of all their guys that helped them get to the finals, hit their shots, just couldn't hit them against Boston. And that's a credit to Boston's defense as well.
Yeah. I think one worry for me, or not worry, but just something that stands out is like Luka can't let that game 3 define him because, as of right now, when you ask people how he played in the finals, like they're very likely going to bring that up. Like the game where they were coming back, had a chance to steal it from Boston after being up 20 whatever, and Luka just completely had a mental breakdown, like you said, like just was losing it on the refs, making awful defensive decisions, and it really cost his team the game.
Too.
They needed him at the very end. They needed him. I don't remember exactly, when it was, but I want to say they did not score after he fouled out. And if they did, they maybe scored 2 or 3 or 4 points because like as soon as they lost him, it's like their offense just slammed on the brakes. They just could not do anything. And that's something you can't do as the best player on the court. You can't have a breakdown like that because a referee doesn't call a foul on a big game. Like it's very likely that's not going to get called in that situation.
Yeah. No, I agree. And Luka, that's why I'm curious to see how he bounced back because big criticism was his defense. Maybe was it at him being out of shape a little. But Dallas overall does definitely have a very interesting team going into next year with the moves they made. They also added like some smaller role players like Najee Marshall to kind of fill that Derek Jones Jr. role. They'll be very interesting. Obviously, a loaded Western Conference, and they're the team that just came out of the West. So can they do it again? Obviously, we both know that they have the talent, but kind of just doubts with some other teams getting better. What they will be able to do, but overall, should be in a very, very exciting season with Dallas. Still have a top 5 player with Luka, Kyrie, very great. Rodman. So
will he finally win his MVP? He puts up 35 a game, seemingly, and he can't get that MVP.
Some people feel like he was robbed this year. So it'll be interesting to see how he does entering next season. But overall, let us know in the comments what you guys think, whether or not Dallas have what it takes to come back to the Western Conference Finals and win the championship, or will they be a team that falls short of those expectations this time around? Curious, as always, to get your guys' thoughts. But as always, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content. This is the Sports Talk on Tap Podcast. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace.